Have you ever had a conversation in Japan where things just felt off? Like maybe you followed all the usual social cues, but the other person's response wasn't what you expected. Like a long pause, a vague answer, or a polite smile. That's probably because communication in Japan follows a set of hidden rules that many foreigners don't realize until it's too late. Today, I'll break down these unspoken rules in Japan, how they impact daily life, and share some tips on how to navigate conversations smoothly in Japan as well. Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Emmy. I was born and raised in Tokyo, Japan, and on this channel, I try to bring the authentic side of Japan from a unique native perspective. For example, did you know that in Japan, a long pause doesn't necessarily mean that someone is unsure? It can actually be a sign of deep thought or respect. Whether you're living here, planning to visit, or just love Japanese culture, these insights will help you connect with people better and avoid misunderstandings. Now, I've learned some of these lessons the hard way, so you don't have to make the same mistakes too. Now, you might be wondering, why is communication in Japan so different? Well, a lot of it comes down to cultural values that shape how people express themselves. One of the biggest values in Japan is wa, which means harmony. In conversation, maintaining this wa or harmony is key. So people actually tend to avoid direct confrontation or anything that may disrupt this harmony. That is why Japanese communication often leads to indirectness or subtlety. Now, in comparison to Western cultures, on the other hand, being direct is often seen as efficient and respectful even. If you have an idea or opinion, you say it clearly. However, in Japan, it is a complete opposite. Being too blunt can actually be seen as inconsiderate and rude. Instead, subtlety and nuances are valued much more in Japan. What isn't said can actually sometimes carry more weight than what is said. Which leads me to my next point. Another key aspect is reading between the lines. For example, let's say that you're planning a dinner with some coworkers. You ask someone if they're free and they respond with, if you're not familiar with Japanese communication, you might think that they just need more time to think about it or they're unsure. But in reality, this phrase is often a polite way of declining without outright saying no. If you keep pushing, "Oh, no worries, just let me know when you decide," you might unknowingly put them in an uncomfortable situation because they already rejected you, just in a subtle way. Now, this kind of indirect communication happens all the time in all sorts of different aspects in Japanese communication. And if you don't know how to read between the lines, you might end up misinterpreting what's actually being said. And that is why understanding the hidden rules of communication in Japan is so important, so that you don't walk away from a conversation thinking one thing when the other person meant something completely different. Now, before we dive into the key hidden rules of communication, I want to share a resource that has been incredibly helpful in me learning Japanese communication nuances. Now, this resource is called FluentU. FluentU helps you listen carefully to real-life conversations so you can notice these pauses and pick up on cultural cues naturally. You can learn Japanese and other languages as well using real-world content like music videos, movie trailers, and news clips. When you sign up for FluentU, the first thing you'll do is personalize your experience. You'll choose from 10 different languages, then you'll set a current language level and set a daily study goal, whether that is 5 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day, so that the experience is completely catered to you. So what makes FluentU so different? It's not your typical textbook or flashcard app. Instead, FluentU helps you learn through real-world content. Now, there are over 10,000 authentic videos to explore, so you're not just memorizing words. You're seeing them used in real context, with real pronunciation, body language, and cultural nuances. And the best part is, everything has interactive subtitles. You can click on any word in the subtitles to instantly see its meaning, pronunciation, and example sentences. Now, FluentU also offers personalized learning tools to help you reinforce what you learn. After watching a video, you can test yourself with personalized quizzes that adapt to the words that you have just learned. FluentU uses a spaced repetition method to help you review words when you're just about to forget them so that you can actually retain what you learn. Now, if you stumble across words that are a bit challenging, you can create your own flashcard set to practice at your own pace. Now, if you want to take it a step even further, there's a Chrome extension that lets you learn with any YouTube or Netflix video that has subtitles. Now, what I personally love about FluentU is that it doesn't feel like studying at all. Something about watching an actor speak, hearing the right pronunciation, and linking it to the written words makes the learning process stick way better. You can look up words and see exactly how they're used in everyday conversations, which is so helpful when you're trying to pick up on those little details. FluentU's curated content doesn't just just teach you vocabulary. It shows you the meaning behind the words, how they're used in context, and helps you gradually build your understanding from individual words to actual sentences. Now the best part, FluentU is offering a special discount just for my viewers. Plus you can try it out with a free trial so you can see how it works for you. Not to mention you can access FluentU everywhere. Whether you prefer learning on your laptop, phone, or tablet, it's available on their website, Apple Store, Google Play, all in one account. I'll leave the download links down below so you can check it out and improve your Japanese naturally. Trust me, this is the perfect way to learn the language while still picking up on those hidden communication rules. Now I've listed 3 key hidden rules of communication in Japan. Rule number 1, the importance of silence. One thing that might stand out when you're having a conversation in Japanese is just how people comfortable are with silence. Unlike in many Western cultures where pauses can feel awkward or signal hesitation, silence in Japan isn't uncomfortable. It's actually a sign of respect. When someone pauses in a conversation, it means that they are listening and giving the other person the space to think. A thoughtful pause in a conversation here means that the person is carefully considering what's being said instead of rushing to respond. Now this is a big part of active listening in Japan. Now my biggest tip with this is don't rush to fill those pauses with chatter. If you jump in too quickly, it can come off as interrupting, which can make things feel a little tense or rushed. Let people have their moment to process before responding. Now rule number 2 is reading the atmosphere. Now let's talk about something called kukiyoyomu, which means reading the air. Now this is a huge part of Japanese communication, I'd say. It's all about paying attention to the mood, the group dynamics, and those subtle cues that tell you how the conversation is going. For example, imagine that you're in a meeting and everyone is silent and just nodding. In some cultures, the silence might signal agreement, but in Japan, however, it might actually mean that people are just avoiding conflict. They don't necessarily agree, but they're also too hesitant to speak up. So if you push too hard to get a response or challenge someone, you could disrupt the harmony of the group. Now the best thing you can do is definitely observe before speaking. Pay special attention to body language and tone to gauge how people are feeling in the moment. This way you can ensure that you're not stepping on anyone's toes and that your message lands well. Rule number 3 is indirect language. Now in Japan, communication tends to be a lot more subtle and indirect than what you might usually be used to. People often hint at things rather than saying them outright. Take the word chotto, for example. On the surface, chotto literally means a little, but depending on the context, it can actually be a polite way of saying no or that's not possible. Again, it's all about the nuance and tone and how it's used. Now my tip for this is when you hear the word chotto or something similar in expression, pay close attention to the tone and context. For instance, if someone says "ちょっと難しい," which translates to a little difficult, they're likely politely declining something even though they haven't outright said no. A good way to respond is acknowledge their hesitation and respond with an alternative, like "I understand. Would a different time work better?" This shows that you are in tune to the response and flexible to the situation. Now, how to adapt to Japanese communication, you might ask? One of the best ways to adapt to Japanese communication is to observe first before diving into conversation. Watch how others are interacting and take note of their communication style. In Japan, people tend to be a little more reserved, so you'll often find that conversations follow a more careful, measured pace. By following their lead, you'll be able to ease into the flow and dynamic of the conversation without disrupting the harmony. It's like learning the rhythm of a new language. It takes time, but the more you observe, the more naturally you'll be able to blend in. Another key tip is to ask clarifying questions subtly. In Japan, directly asking "Do you mean no?" can sometimes come off as too blunt or too straightforward. Instead, try framing your questions in a more gentler way. For example, if you sense that someone is a bit hesitant or reluctant, instead of directly challenging them, you could respond to them by saying, "Would it be better to revisit this later?" This phrase shows that you're considering their feelings and giving them the space to politely decline or delay without putting them on the spot. It doesn't seem like a big deal, and it's a small shift, but it can make all the difference in keeping the conversation smooth and respectful. Lastly, make it a point to learn some common indirect expressions and their true meanings. This is especially important when it comes to understanding things like chotto or other subtle phrases that might not be immediately obvious to outsiders. Now, these indirect expressions often carry more weight than its literal meaning. By recognizing these nuances, you'll avoid misunderstandings and just be overall better equipped to respond appropriately. It shows that you are in tune with the culture and respect the subtleties of the language, which can really help strengthen your communication communication with Japanese speakers. Now, trust me, I understand when I say that communication in Japan can feel super complicated and can feel like navigating a maze. But once you understand these hidden rules, it honestly becomes a lot easier and more rewarding. If you've experienced any of these communication challenges or have any tips of your own, please leave them in the comments down below. I love seeing all your comments as always. And again, check out FluentU if you want to take your language and cultural understanding to the next level. All the download links are down below in the description box as mentioned. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!